oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, 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 yeah. Uh-huh. When I started out, it was just a matter of seeing you every day. Oh, I look forward to the times when you would come my way. Oh yeah, I long just to see you. I smile just to reach you. I became a victim of the very songs I sing. Oh, you gave me a brand new reason to start fixing up my face. Yes, you did. Having cocktails at your favorite place. Oh yeah, a table just for two. I got rid of loneliness. Now that I have you, I became a victim of the very songs I sing. I told you young hearts run free, but I didn't listen to myself. Oh, ain't love by the power of love. I just fell right in. Oh, yes, I did. Wasn't hardly worried about tomorrow. You were my future. Oh, as long as I was being satisfied, I didn't want nothing else. No, no, baby. And now, already, I've been left at home. Yes, I am. I wonder what it is that makes a man leaves a girl so all alone. Oh, people, another woman is usually the thing. Running around just don't seem to change. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I'm a victim, Lord. I'm a victim. I'm a victim of the very songs I sing. Yeah. Why don't you practice what you preach? That's what everybody keeps telling me. They say my advice is good for others. It's gotta be good for me. Can't you see? I try to occupy my mind, keep myself busy all the time. Ooh. But the more I try to, the more I keep thinking of you. Oh, baby. Oh, well, I guess I'll end up in the lost and found. Ooh, it looks like love and me, we fought another round. Oh, yeah, another woman is his claim to fame. I'd be lucky if I can break these chains. Victim, victim.
Welcome from the couch. I'm JoJo Mac. That song you just heard, Victim, the cover of Candy Staten's song. That song was produced by Studio One, COXONE DODD himself, in 2002, when I went to Jamaica to find the music. Yeah, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. Studio One, COXONE DODD, and how I got there and what we did. Yes. So I'm gonna get right into it. Welcome from the couch. Now, you know, the music has always been first and foremost in my mind, my head, my soul, my everything. Like I said, I could do so much. I did so much, but still I keep coming back to the music because that's what I love. So when I gave up my business, which was at the time my hair salon in Washington D.C., to go chase the music, I moved to Florida to be closer to Jamaica. And so I wanted to go to Jamaica because they say you have to go to Jamaica to get that real thing and to get popping. So I went to Jamaica and, just searching and trying to get things done. And it so happened that one day I went to Freddie McGregor's Big Ship studio because a friend of mine was there working. And I'm like, I'm just going to go check my friend out. And I went there and I ran into the great, now late, Mr. Ernest Wilson. And it so happened that I heard him singing. He was in the yard sitting under a tree. And I heard him singing. I went outside because I was in the studio and I went outside and, I'm like, wow. And I looked at him and I'm like, that's Mr. Ernest Wilson. I knew him when I was a little girl. When I used to pass by Aquarius Studio, like coming from school. And I would see him. And I would go in the studio and he would be there playing the piano. And I would sing along. And I did that quite a few times. And so that's how I knew that man. But it wasn't like, I knew him to the point where we were going to make some music together or anything like that. Because I was still young at this. I didn't even know at the time that I wanted to sing. I just knew I could sing. And I loved the music, And Lord, if my mom and them knew that I was stopping at no studio coming from school, they wouldn't have been too pleased about that. But anyway, I saw him outside the Freddie McGregor studio. That was in 2000, the end of 2001, not even quite the end of 2001, like mid 2001. And he was singing and I joined in, give him harmonies and stuff to what he was singing. I didn't even know the song. I was just singing along and carrying on. And then I introduced myself and I asked him, I said, are you Mr. Ernest Wilson? And he said, yes. And I'm like, wow, I've always loved your music, because I think my mom would always play music because she loved music too. And I told him about, I was that little girl who used to come to Aquarius and you would play the piano for when I'm coming from school or whatever. And he said he remembered. I'm not sure if he remembered, but he was so nice. He said he remembered. And he was like, wow, you can really sing. Why don't I take you to meet Mr. Dodd? I'm like, who's Mr. Dodd? And he was like, Studio One. I knew a Studio One. But I didn't know Mr. Dodd's name. And he was like, I'm going to take you to meet COXONE Dodd. You want to meet me there tomorrow at 12 o'clock? And he gave me an address. And I was there by like 12 o'clock. I was there. Well, when I got there, Ernest wasn't there yet. And so I went inside. They let me in because they don't let anybody through that gate. But they let me in. And Mrs. Dodd was at the front desk, and I sat at the chair next to her desk and introduced myself and tell her that Ernest asked me to meet him to introduce me to Mr. Dodd. And her and I, we had a nice little conversation for about a good 10 minutes. Later on, people were saying that Mrs. Dodd is not so normally so welcoming to people when they come through, especially women. Well, I don't know, but that's what they were saying. But from the beginning, she was really nice to me. And so, before Ernest got there, like about maybe 20 minutes after I got there, Ernest didn't come till about a couple hours later, till about 2 o'clock that day. And she took me around back in like 10-15 minutes and introduced me to Mr. Dodd. So I told Mr. Dodd the same story again. Ernest wanted me to meet him, and so he said, well, Ernest is not here, so do you have anything like you want me to hear? And I had a CD in my hand, and instead of giving him the CD, I just started singing something I was making up in my head. That was crazy. I don't even know where that came from. I don't know if it was nerves or what, but I started singing a song I was making up in my head at the time. But it sounded good to him, I guess, because he told me to go, wait back out in the front with Mrs. Dodd. I went back out there, and he told me, he said, we'll talk when Ernest comes. And later, Ernest came, a couple hours later. And by the time, Ernest came, like few minutes after that, Mr. Dodd invited me in the back into the studio. I'm like, wow. And he played a beat. And he said, you think you can sing on that beat? And I'm like, sure, of course. And he asked me, you have a song? I said I could write one. And I wrote a song. I'm not even gonna lie, I don't remember which one was the first song that I wrote, because I ended up doing 22 songs. But the first song I did for him was like a couple of hours after we met. I was in the studio making my first song from a beat from his archive. And when that was over, he told me, I want you to come back here tomorrow. That was the next day. He wanted me to come back. And he's like, do you have a ride to come back? And I said, no, I would have to take a taxi. And he called this man and said, I want you to take her home. And I want you to pick her up tomorrow morning. I want you to start driving her to the studio, back and forth to the studio. We have some work to do. Come to find out, the man was Bounty Killer's dad. They call him Breezer. Yeah. He was Bounty Killer's dad. So anyway, Bounty Killer dad became my driver per Mr. Dodd. So he would take me back and forth morning after morning, because now I was working 5 days a week with Mr. Dodd in the studio. He was giving me some beats to take home, and I was writing some songs on my own. And they would make the beat to those, and then he would give me some beats from his archive, and I would write to those, and that's how the work started. But actually, at first, what he had in mind after that first song that I did on my own, he told me, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do a duets album with you and Ernest Wilson. He said, I think your voices complement each other very well, and I think I want to do a duets album. So now Ernest started coming into the studio, and we ended up doing 5 songs, 5 beautiful songs, if you know how Ernest can sing. And then me are trying to make him outdo me, so I'm doing my thing, right? And I remember one of the songs, the first one we did, Merlin Weber and Jennifer Laura, they were there. Mr. Dodd brought them in to come do background vocals. And I remember Mr. Dodd said to me that, he want me to learn from those 2 ladies how to do background, because they were very good at it. But then there was also Vin Morgan, who was the director. He was directing everything. He was making the music, and he was directing the vocals with me, Merlin, and Jennifer. But Jennifer and Merlin, they were very good at it. I was learning. Yeah, turned out great. It so happened that a lot of people did background vocals on the songs from the different groups that used to come through there. Some of the guys that from different groups. Geez, I can't remember some of the group names because I'm not really familiar with the names like that. But the gentlemen that were hanging out there from the different groups that COXONE produced. Even Oris Andy did some background vocals. Yeah, a lot of people came in and just did work. Yeah, and they were loving what was happening. And, well, there was hardly anything else getting done but me. Because Mr. Dodd is like him clear everything to make way for me to do this album, me and Ernest. And we ended up doing 5 songs. 5 songs. Me and Ernest, and then Ernest wasn't showing up. And, Mr. Dad started getting frustrated about the whole thing, and he said, you know what? I'm just going to do an album with you, because Ernest is not showing up. Ernest was sometimes, hanging out other places, but he wasn't showing up at Studio One, and Mr. Dad was kind of disappointed in that, because he wanted that duets album. He had a plan in mind, and it wasn't happening the way he wanted it to happen. So he decided, you know what? We can work with you. We're going to do an album with you. He gave me a contract to sign. I remember it was Dennis Howard, Dr. Dennis Howard now, that looked over my contract for me and thing. I'ma sign up my contract and rate and get my little upfront money and thing. And it wasn't no little money, it was decent. You know, some decent money he gave me. And I can't complain about money when it came to Mr. Dad, because Mr. Dad was pouring money into me every week. Every week he was making sure I had money. Get my envelope for carry home on Friday evening time, and during the week too I would get some additional money, and if I did background vocals and anything I would get paid for that too, you know. And Mrs. Dodd, she was, you know, giving me like envelopes on the side as well, you know. So because for some reason she was really into me. And Merlene and Jennifer Laura couldn't understand, why is Mrs. Dodd so into you? She don't normally like no what for women and thing. But Mrs. Dodd was clearly into me. She liked me a lot. And I liked her. I liked her a lot. I was having a great time. I remember Mr. Dodd told me, you know, you bring a lot of sunshine here. People used to say that I brought a lot of sunshine to Studio One. You know, it was amazing that they accepted me with such open arms. I was that girl. You know, I remember Mr. Dodd did some kind of interview with someone from one of the newspapers, and he told them, he said, this is going to be the new era of Studio One, and I'm going to be the new Marcia Griffiths of Studio One. He actually said that. But, you know, I love Marcia, of course, but yeah, and I felt good to hear him say that. But yes, I was going to be the new female, he says, for Studio One. I was gonna be, what them call it now, the queen. Yeah, and you know, unfortunately, you know, he passed, but we know all about that. But before he passed, we ended up working on 22 songs together, and I just remember coming in every Monday through Friday. Every Monday through Friday, I was at Studio One doing my thing. Vin Morgan, and everyone was just talking all the time about, why you just bring a lot of joy to Studio One. Everyone that came through was saying the same thing. Mr. Dodd said it over and over. Mrs. Dodd said it over and over. Because I'm a happy girl. And I've always been a happy girl. So, you know, being myself was easy. But you know, what I didn't tell you is that when I met him that day, I introduced myself as Goldie, because I was still Goldie that day when I first met him. But the following day I came back and I said, Mr. Dodd, I changed my name. He looked up at me and he said, what did you change your name to? And I said, JoJo Mac. And he was like, that's a strong name. That's a very strong name. And he said, why did you change it? And I said, I actually had a dream the night before, like a friend of mine was calling me JoJo and said, why don't you call yourself JoJo? And I knew there was a singer in America named JoJo. So I decided to add the Mac to it. You know, anybody knows me from a long time know that my name is Joan Mackenzie. My, you know, birth name, Joan Mackenzie. So when, you know, it was when I dreamt that, you know, I should call myself JoJo, I added the Mac to it, and he was telling me that's a strong name. You know, Mr. Dad said it's strong. It's strong. All right. So, yeah, I met quite a few people at Studio One. Mr. Dodd made me his main focus while I was there. He practically shut down the studio for me to work on my music. And, you know, I was kind of disappointed that me and Ernest didn't get to do the duets album, but I was also excited that now I was doing my own album. You know, I wasn't strapped for anything. I wasn't strapped for cash. I was being taken care of. And, you know, unfortunately, I hear a lot of people talk a lot of things about Studio One and what they didn't get. But I can't say the same thing. I have to say that while I was there, I was well taken care of. Mr. Dodd and Mrs. Dodd made sure that I was taken care of. And so Studio One experience for me was a really good one. It was a really good one. Not only did I do duets with Ernest Wilson. I remember while there, Sleepy, they call him Sleepy, Horace Andy. Horace Andy came through, and I don't know whose suggestion was it that I do a song with Horace Andy. I think it was probably Mr. Dodd. Could be Mrs. Dodd, because Mrs. Dodd really liked him. So it so happens that I had a song. Mr. Dodd asked me if I have a song I could do with Horace Andy, and I said yes. And he gave us well, he didn't give us a beat. What happened was I gave him the song. I gave the song to Horace. I gave him the words, and I sang it also. I think I sang it on a cassette, and I gave him the words and stuff along with it. I wrote the words out for him, and Vin Morgan, made the skeleton beat to it, give us the like a ping ping from the piano and whatever, because we left that with him too for him to go home. I sang it for him to go home and start working on it, and the next day he would come back and, keep working at it. So when he was done making the beat for it, that was an original beat. When he finished making the beat, Horace and I went in the studio and we voiced it, and Merlin Weber, of course, Horace, myself, and Jennifer Laura, we put the background vocals onto it. And I remember the first song we did together was Sweetest Love, a song called Sweetest Love, right? And Horace really enjoyed the song. It came out beautiful. Oh my gosh. If they should ever put out those songs at Studio One, I'm telling you, they were awesome songs. I remember when Horace came back like a couple of days later, probably the next day, Horace said to Mr. Dodd, Mr. Dodd, I want to do another song with her, and Mr. Dodd said, yeah, you can do another song with her. Did you have something in mind? And Horace said he could write a song. You know how Mr. Dodd calls everyone Jackson, right? Mr. Dodd said, when Horace said he could write a song, Mr. Dodd said, Jackson, you know something, I think you should let her write the song, because I think her pen is stronger than yours. Yeah, and I ended up, Mr. Dodd is a mess. He'll tell it like it is though, or like he sees it. And yeah, I wrote another song, I Think That They Know. Yeah, I Think That They Know was the second track we did together. That was a beautiful track as well. And we recorded that during the course of that week. So yeah, I did 22 songs for Mr. Dodd, and Mr. Dodd was like, you know what? You bring so much joy to this place. He told me that when I was leaving, actually, that, he called me in his office and he said, you brought so much joy to this place. I'm going to make sure that that big smile that you brought, that you came in here with, stay on your face. And when we finish with this album, I want to still see that smile on your face. But unfortunately, we didn't get to see that come to fruition because of his passing. And I'm kind of sad that, no one at Studio One put that album out, because they knew Mr. Dodd was working on my album. They knew the passion he had about it. And they also knew the promise that he made me about that album, But, I don't know why they didn't put anything out, because I know they put things out since his passing. They've put out a few things, I know. I know that they probably have their legal issues going on, but I know they also put out stuff since he passed, and no one put out even a single. I'm kind of disappointed in that, because I know if Mr. Dodd was around, that album would come to fruition. But hey, and like I said, I did 22 songs. Mr. Dad was very pleased about the songs. I remember he said to me, he said, you know, you came here, you worked 8 months in this in Studio One. You did a great job. Everybody liked you and Ray. And he was like, you did 22 songs, and I can say I'm very pleased about them, except for that pony song, because I'd written a song from riding pony thing. I think it was called Pony, about riding the pony and stuff. Him said that pony song, you never really sit down on the saddle. Him said we never really sit down on the saddle when I was riding the pony, you know? That was something else. I could take all day to talk about Cox and Dodd and the way they treated me at Studio One, because I have no complaints, you know. And man, it was just sad that after I came back to America, you know, he passed. But before he passed, he released a couple of songs for me. He released a song called Good Girl Go Bad. On this beat that Tony Rebel had hit over. It came out during the same time when Tony Rebel had redone one of Mr. Dodd's beat. I think he did that song with Sway on that beat. Well, I did a song called Good Girl Go Bad on the beat, the original Studio One beat, straight out of the archive. Yeah, and Mr. Dodd put that one out. He released that. He actually released one version of it, and then like a couple of days later he took it down and tell me to go back and sing it again, and he re-released it. Yeah, Good Girl Go Bad. I think that's probably the first song that I actually wrote as well and sang in the studio. Yeah, he sent me back in after he put it out initially. He pulled it and let me go back in and sing it again, you know, and then he re-released it. Yeah, on vinyl. It was vinyl and thing, and I think it could have been on CD at the time, because it was 2001 2002. You know, I worked between the months between 2001 and 2002. I think from August to 2001 to February, somewhere around there, 2002. Yeah, and he also released the cover, the song I played earlier, Victim, the Candice Staten original, my cover. I remember when we were doing Victim, there was a guy in the studio that he was new, he was learning as an engineer. Courtney was the main one that was engineering the studio sessions for me, Courtney Dodd. But there was Theo, this guy named Theo, that was there with Courtney, and he voiced some of the songs as well. And I remember when Mr. Dodd was leaving that evening, he said to Theo, do a rough run, let her do a rough run on the track for Victim, because Vin Morgan had made the beat, and he had finished it that day. So he said, let her do a rough take on it, and you know, so I can listen to it, you know, when I get home. And I remember standing in the voice room at the microphone, and the mic wasn't sounding right. The mic just wasn't sounding right. And I said to Theo, Theo, fix the mic. It's not sounding right. I want the mic crisp and nice. And Theo said, don't worry about it, man, because it's just a rough take you're going to make. And I said, I don't care. I want the mic to sound nice. And he fixed the mic. And I did one take through the entire song. We never stop. We never itch. Nothing. Just boom, from start to finish. I did the entire song. And when we came, Mr. Dodd took it home on cassette. And when we came back the next day, I'm thinking we're going to be recording this song now. Mr. Dodd said to me, we're not re-recording this enough. He said, this is it. He said, that was it right there. That take, that was it. And he never re-recorded the song. That was supposed to be a rough take, one go through the entire song. Yeah, and he released that song as well. Victim. Yeah. So that what you heard, that was one take in the studio from start to finish. No itch, no nothing. It was like I was on stage singing that song. So Mr. Dad kind of, Mr. Dad kind of did, know him have something special in me because he always said it. Kingston and all them people were there. They were all excited about me at the time, you know. Um, but yeah, that was it. But I have to tell you this little part about Mr. Dad was very protective of me as well. Because I remember one day he said to me, as I told you, Bounty Killer's dad was driving me. He was my driver. And one day, Mr. Dad, out of the blue, Mr. Dad, one morning he picked me up and take me to the studio. And Mr. Dad said to me, "Is Breeza bothering you?" And I said, "Why you ask?" He said, "Tell me, am I bother you?" I was like, "Kinda." Yeah, because Breeza try, get in my pants. And I said, "Kinda." And Mr. Dad said, "All right." And that evening, Breeza didn't get to take me home. Mr. Dad found me another driver. So he was very protective of me, and he makes sure I'm always all right. Mrs. Dodd makes sure I was all right. I remember Mrs. Dodd, after I was there like a few months, like 6 months or so, but I was already in Jamaica for more than 6 months. And when I met Mr. Dodd, so Mrs. Dodd went to the US, and when Mrs. Dodd came back, she brought me clothes and stuff. Like she said, "I know you've been here a while, and then I see you like to dress up and thing." And she bought me some nice stuff. I'm like, wow, Merlin and Jennifer, they were all like, "What? Mrs. Dad don't do that kind of stuff." But she did it for me. So I was treated really well at Studio One. I was constantly happy. I didn't have a bad moment at Studio One. I went to a few funerals. I've got of people, Studio One people who passed. I was like part of the Studio One family in the moment. I remember when I was supposed to come back home, because I had an open ticket, and when I was supposed to come back home, it had really passed. It was almost 2 years that I was down there, and when I went to the airport, I didn't even know that I can't just go pick up myself and go to the airport. My ticket was like done. It expired. So when I went to the airport that day I said goodbye and everything, I went to the airport. I couldn't fly out because them said my ticket expired. I have to buy a new ticket. And I remember I let the taxi take me back down to Studio One, because by this time I don't have no money for my ticket. By this time I'm going back to America with what? 34 US in my pocket. I'm like, okay. And I went back to Studio One and tell Mr. Dad, "You know what? I can't fly on my ticket. They say my ticket has expired because it was only good for a year. And I've been here way over a year." And Mr. Dad said, "How much is the ticket?" And him just shell out the dollars and shell out some like an extra and say, "All that, And the following day, I went back to America. Yeah. So that was my experience with Mr. Dad and Studio One and Mrs. Dad and all the wonderful things that happened there. I met another wonderful people. He would have me do the newspaper thing, people come in and interview me. He had people take pictures. I wonder what happened to those pictures. But he was all into me at the time. And, like I said, when it was studio time for JoJo Mac, nobody can come in. Just JoJo Mac and all the players that were there at the time. And it's like I was the only person he was working with at the time, because nobody else came in to record. Maybe once or twice, you see, I think from the boys' school, some people come in and do some work. Yeah, but aside from that, it was just me. And the day I was leaving, that's when he told me, he said, you brought a lot of joy here. And I'm going to make sure that that smile you came with, you're leaving with, and you'll keep it on your face. I'm going to make sure when this is out, you're happy. And it saddens me that that didn't get to happen because of his passing, you know, and then Mrs. Dodd passed. So it was sad all around. Even though I had such a joyful time, it turned out really sad. I pray that one day that they release some of those songs or even that album at Studio One, because it was some great work. It was my best time in the music. When I talk about it, it keeps a smile on my face. Even though it turned out the way it did, the smile can't come off of my face. I work with Studio One, the greatest of all times when it comes to the reggae music. Yes, and if COXONE DODD gives you the okay, you are okay. If COXONE DODD sign off on the paperwork, you are signed in. Okay? If COXONE DODD said, come let me record you, you know you're special. That's what everyone told me. So, and I believe it, because we hear the work that comes out of Studio One. Some of the greatest artists come out of Studio One. And I'm just happy that I'm a part of that, even if it was only 2 singles that came out. So I'm still I'm still holding out a hope that someday maybe those songs will get released, the album, or even a couple of singles or so. I'm thinking that now that Ernest passed and we have 5 songs together, maybe they could put out a nice EP with me and Ernest. 5 songs make an EP. That would be a nice duets EP. Oh my gosh, it would be an awesome piece of work. So I hope Studio One people are hearing me and take this into consideration, that, you know, maybe they could put out an EP with me and Ernest. Thanks for listening. You know, normally I would sing a song coming out of the show, but I'm not going to do that this time. This time I'm going to play that same song that you heard at the top of the show, Victim. That song I said I did the one take on from Studio One, COXONE DODD's Lawn. Yeah, it's in his archive right now. I'm very proud of that song. Only I didn't write it, but yeah. It's one of my better covers, I think. I've done a couple of covers, and it's one of my better ones. But I want to end the segment just a little different than I did before on the other shows. So I'm going to break the norm right now, break protocol, and play that song again for you from COXONE DODD, Victim.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. When I started out, it was just a matter of seeing you every day. Oh, I look forward to the times when you would come my way. Oh yeah, I long just to see you. I smile just to reach you. I became a victim of the very songs I sing. Oh, you gave me a brand new reason to start fixing up my face. Yes, you did. having cocktails at your favorite place. Ooh, yeah, a table just for two. I got rid of loneliness. Now that I have you, I became a victim of the very songs I sing. I told you young hearts run free, but I didn't listen to myself. And love by the power of love, I just fell right in. Oh yes I did. Wasn't hardly worried about tomorrow. You were my future. As long as I was being satisfied, I didn't want nothing else. No, no, baby. And now, already, I've been left at home. Yes, I am. I wonder what it is that makes a man leaves a girl so all alone. Oh, yeah. Another woman is usually the thing. Running around just don't seem to change. I'm a victim. I'm a victim.
Thank you so very much. This was another episode of From the Couch, and I thank you very much for tuning in once again. Yeah, man. This is where I say bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of From the Couch with JoJo Mac. Please don't forget to like and share and comment. And if you haven't, subscribe. And don't forget to click the bell icon to be notified when the next upload happens. Thank you.